haven where families moved for peace and security. The Jacksons, a young couple with a baby, had just moved into their new home. The house was perfect, a cozy 2-story with a large backyard and a wraparound porch. But there was something off about their new neighbor, Mr. Abernathy. At first, they brushed it off as just eccentricity. The older man, Mr. Abernathy, lived in the house next door, and he rarely left. He had no family, no visitors, and almost never spoke to anyone. He would often stand in his window, staring blankly at the Jacksons' house, his face expressionless. At night, the curtains would be drawn, but they could still see him in silhouette, just standing there, as if waiting. It didn't take long before Mrs. Jackson began to feel uneasy. Every time she took her baby out for a walk, Mr. Abernathy would be watching from behind his window, never blinking, never moving. The eerie stillness in his gaze made her stomach turn. One evening she decided to confront him. She knocked on his door to introduce herself and perhaps break the tension. When he answered, he was pleasant enough, but his eyes seemed distant. He invited her in for tea, but she politely declined, sensing something was wrong. "Just call if you need anything," he said in a voice that was too soft, almost whispered. She left quickly, her heart racing as she walked back home. Days passed, and the unnerving feeling continued to grow. Mr. Abernathy was always watching. Even more disturbing, Mrs. Jackson noticed that he had a collection of old photographs on his porch. Strange photos. Photos of people she didn't recognize, most of them blurry or dark, with people's faces cut out. She didn't think much of it at first, but as the days wore on, she couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. One evening, after a storm, the Jacksons had a power outage. Mrs. Jackson, feeling uneasy about the silence in the house, decided to check on her baby. But as she walked down the hall, she heard something that made her blood run cold, the sound of someone walking through the hallway, outside her door. She froze, listening. There were slow, deliberate footsteps, getting closer. Her heart began pounding. Was it her husband? No, he was out at work. The baby was sound asleep, so it wasn't him. The doorbell rang suddenly, and she jumped. She quickly opened the door, and there stood Mr. Abernathy, holding a strange bundle of old, yellowed photographs in his hands. "I found these in my attic," he said softly, eyes wide. "I thought you might want to see them. I used to live here, you know, with my family." Mrs. Jackson's breath caught in her throat. The photos were familiar, too familiar. They weren't just any old photographs. They were pictures of the Jacksons' home, but they were taken decades ago, and in every single one of them, her family wasn't there. Instead, the faces of other families, long gone, were frozen in time, families that seemed to share an unsettling resemblance to her own. What is this?" she asked, trembling. "You've seen them, haven't you?" Mr. Abernathy replied in a low, distant voice. "You've seen the faces, the families. They never leave. Neither do I. This house has always been mine." Before she could respond, he turned and disappeared into the darkness of his own house, the door slamming shut behind him. The next morning, Mrs. Jackson found something chilling outside her door, an envelope with no return address. Inside there was a single photo of her family, but it was different. The photo was old and faded, and in the background, barely visible, was the figure of Mr. Abernathy, his face now fully visible, watching from the porch, his expression cold and lifeless. Mrs. Jackson never saw Mr. Abernathy again after that night. He had vanished from the neighborhood without a trace. The house was abandoned, the windows boarded up, and no one dared to ask about him. But the Jacksons knew. They knew that something was terribly wrong with that house and the man who had lived there. Soon after, the Jacksons moved away, but whenever they passed by their old neighborhood, they couldn't help but glance over at the abandoned house, and there, always just for a moment, they would see a shadow in the window, watching